Jersey are upset because for every dollar we send in to the federal government, we get 61 cents back. That places us 50th in the nation. Makes us really mad. Well, the folks in Teaneck and a lot of Bergne County towns should be so fortunate. For every dollar Teaneck sends to Trenton in income tax, it gets 12 cents back in school aid. In comparison, for every dollar that Asbury Park sends to Trenton in income tax, it gets over $15 back in school aid. 12 cents versus $15 and 2 cents. So, to summarize, Teaneck sends in 4 times as much in the income tax fund. Asbury Park gets 22 times as much, or another way of looking at it is a Teaneck Township student receives 1/22nd the amount of a Asbury Park student. Now, what's the expenditure per student? The total expenditure for Asbury Park over $26,000, and Teaneck is $17,000. Many of the towns I go to, they're spending $12,000. So after they get virtually nothing back from the state, they're spending $12,000, and we have towns that are getting most of their school funding provided by the state, and they're spending more than double in many towns. Teaneck is fortunate that they're able to afford $17,868. And as I said, that number doesn't include 3- and 4-year preschool, but free schools that are built by the state. Now, you would think that that would be enough for the Supreme Court of New Jersey, that Teaneck sending in 4 times as much, Asbury Park getting 22 times as much, and they're spending more money. No, this spring, the Supreme Court said it's not enough. You got to send them another $500 million to the Abbott district. That's not enough, what they're getting. So I am proposing that we give everybody skin in the game. Everybody, before they give away a tax abatement, before they decide to do things like pay their bus drivers overtime to charge up their cell phones at home, before we have situations like the superintendent of Jersey City flying over to England and driving around in limousines and going to 5-star hotels and $300 steak dinners, before they do things like that, they should say, hey, maybe we should be a little bit more careful with our money. And the way to do that, in my opinion, and what I'm proposing, is that every student in the state of New Jersey gets the same amount of money from the income tax fund. After we collect the money progressively, where those who make more pay more, and those who make less pay little or nothing, we ought to divide the money equally for every student. That would be about $7,481 per student. And what would that mean for Teaneck? This year, Teaneck is getting $4.9 million to fund your schools. And if you had $7,481 per student from the state, Teaneck would go up to $31.8 million. That would be an increase of $26.9 million. And what would the folks at Teaneck do? Hopefully, the idea is they would return it to the taxpayer, the property taxpayer, by cutting that tax bill. Because your tax bill, if you look at it, you have a county portion, you have a municipal portion. The largest portion is going to be your school aid. This would be, they're going directly back to the property taxpayers of Teaneck. And how would the other towns in Bergne County do? And I have a handout here. Virtually every town in Bergne County, you can see what they're getting on the left, what they would get under fair school funding, and on the right is how much more they would get. And you can see, and you can take the list home and share it with your friends and neighbors, virtually every town in Bergne County, including Teaneck, would get more money. Here's more of the list. Garfield City, I think, is the only one they would go down, 11.4 million. %85 of the towns in the state of New Jersey, 85% of the districts would get more money under the Fair School Funding Plan. And it's interesting, when you look, I happen to be a Republican, but when you look at Democrats, both sides of the aisle, whether it's Loretta Weinberg right here in Teaneck, she represents Teaneck, but would get I think $26, $27 million more. Paul Sarlo, who's the Democrat chairman of the Budget Committee, every one of his towns would get more. Robert Gordon over in, this is 37, right? 38. I'm sorry, 38. 38 would get more money. The majority leader, Barbara Buono, represents Edison, New Jersey. They would get $98 million more. Senator Vitale from Woodbridge would get $80 million more. Senator Greenstein from Middlesex County, they would get, one of her towns, Monroe Township, just one, would get $40 million more. So I don't understand why these folks wouldn't support this plan. I think it makes a lot of sense and it's fair. So a lot of people would say, gee, Mike, if you have fair school funding, that's not fair for the folks in Asbury Park because, you know, they're not as wealthy as the folks in Teaneck. I think it is fair. Remember how I said for every dollar you send to Washington, D.C., you get 61 cents back? And for every dollar Teaneck sends, you get 12 cents back? Well, even under fair school funding, Teaneck gets back 76 cents on the dollar that you send down to Trenton. Meanwhile, Asbury Park is still getting $4.52. So that's a pretty good return on the money they're sending down to Trenton. So even under the fair school funding plan, Asbury Park gets 6 times more back for every dollar contributed in the income tax as compared to Teaneck. Now, one of the problems we have in New Jersey is that the Supreme Court has hijacked this entire process. And in many instances, the elected officials have been totally taken out of the equation. As I told you, after Governor Christie proposed his budget this year, the Supreme Court said, guess what? You guys did it wrong. The legislature was wrong. You have to send $500 million more to the Abbott districts. So in spite of the fact that we have the most expensive public school system on the face of the earth, in spite of the fact that we're spending more in the Abbott districts total than we are in the suburban districts, they said it's not good enough, send them $500 million. Now, I have a problem with this because I'm a member of the legislature. I know we have a freeholder, and you take an oath of office. And you take an oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of New Jersey. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you that the Supreme Court is violating the Constitution when they tell legislators, you got it wrong and you have to revote. You have to change your vote. They're trying to control our vote. That is not what our Constitution says. Our Constitution says that the legislature shall provide for a thorough and efficient system of education. It doesn't say anything about the judiciary. It doesn't even say anything about the governor, the executive branch. One branch under our Constitution, the legislature, is supposed to be making these decisions. This is the separation of powers clause in the Constitution. Basically, it says we have 3 branches of government. Each branch has their own power and their own authority, and the other branches shall not exercise anybody else's power. So for the judicial branch to be saying, oh, we're going to control the legislative decision on school funding, that violates this, the separation of powers clause. Now, we've all heard of the thorough and efficient clause. That's the clause that the Supreme Court likes to cite. And I believe the reason that they like this thorough and efficient clause is because what the heck does thorough and efficient mean? If you ask a dozen people, what does thorough and efficient mean? They say, they give you their own definition. Well, here's what I think thorough and efficient means. But amazingly, this is Article 8, Section 4, Paragraph 1. Amazingly, the paragraph right below it provides a little more clarity. Right here, Article 8, Section 4, Paragraph 2. And I've bolded the relevant part. It says the fund for the support of free public schools shall be annually appropriated to the support of free public schools and for the equal benefit of all the people of the state. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this provision has been in our Constitution since 1844. This is right below the thorough and efficient clause. The practice of New Jersey going back to 1844 was to have a school fund and divide it equally for each student. As a matter of fact, this topic came up in the 1947 Constitutional Convention, and there was a lot of debate about it, and people came before the commissioners, or the members of the convention, Committee, and they said, hey, you know, we should get some more money. It's more expensive to operate in our town. And you know what the Constitutional Convention did? Nothing. They left it exactly the same. So what was the practice of New Jersey under this provision of the Constitution? When you have a school fund, it should be divided equally for each student. It was discussed in 1947, and the members of the Constitutional Convention did absolutely nothing. I have to ask, why does the Supreme Court of New Jersey never cite this provision in their decisions? Perhaps because it's pretty clear. Perhaps because you don't need to be an attorney and to understand what thorough and efficient is. That you can understand shall be annually appropriated to the support of free public schools and for the equal benefit of all the people of the state. I believe that this supports fair school funding. And to do anything else violates this constitutional provision. Now, there's legislation that I've introduced in the form of a constitutional amendment. Basically, what it does is it restates what we just talked about, that when you collect the income tax, progressively, that the money should be divided equally. We have a number of sponsors of this legislation. Anybody ever hear of Senator Cardinale?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, Senator Cardinale is a sponsor of this legislation, as is Senator Bucco, Senator Oroho, and Senator Panaccio. They sit on the Budget Committee with me. And in the Assembly, we have Assemblyman John DeMaio, Assemblywoman Allison McCose. There's other Assembly people that have signed up to sponsor this legislation as well. What can you do? As the Bergne County Freeholders did, Freeholder Mitchell and his colleagues, there's a resolution that you can have your local elected body, whether it's the Board of Education, your Township Committee, your Borough Council, your Freeholder Board, they can pass this resolution saying, hey, we support fair school funding, and this resolution has been passed by a number of counties. It's been passed by Bergne County, it's been passed by Sussex County, Hunterdon County, Warren County, and many, many towns. And it's my goal that we get this resolution passed. It's my goal that this be the main topic of the fall campaign for the legislature. Every member of the legislature is up this year in 2011 in both the state Senate and the General Assembly. 120 races, 120 candidates, positions, and they ought to have to take a stand on this issue. Are you going to stand up for the taxpayers of Bergne County? Are you going to stand up for the status quo that takes their money and sends it to folks who don't spend it carefully and are spending twice as much in many instances? Now, I have a website. You can find out some more information by going to fairschoolfunding.com, and you can also put your information in about your town, and it will tell you how much your town will save under the Fair School Funding Plan and how much property tax relief you would get. So I appreciate you all coming out. I appreciate your attention on this very warm evening. And
who the hell do you think you are?
Move it a little bit to the right.